Well, this was a real pile of shit. Let's rank this film on the Cageometer.
All right, let's wrap this goddamn thing up because we are going just as long as the fucking movie itself. I'm curious what this final number is going to be, but we'll start off with Vince arbitrarily forever. Where do you rate USS Indianapolis, Men of Courage, of Honor, of Spirit of Vengeance, of New Orleans from 2016?
Protocol.
Where does it rate on your Cageometer?
Oh, Jesus Christ. This is a terrible movie that I think dishonored all the folks that lost their lives in that event and the men that survived. I feel like giving it a 1 would be too harsh because I feel like that would then kind of shit on the people that did genuinely try to make this into something watchable. So I'll give it a 2 out of respect to everybody. It's just an awful movie. We talked about it enough. It's just terrible. And then Cage, I'll give Cage I don't know. I feel like 5 is not fair. I don't know. The way I rate things, like 5 is like middle of the road. So I'll give him a 5 because that's how I rate 5. His performance wasn't terrible. It wasn't great. Like, I think he did. I do appreciate the fact that he kept things like pretty calm. And I, like you guys said, it's probably out of respect to the actual Rear Admiral. But you really could have put anybody in his. You could have cast anybody in his role. He didn't add or detract from it for me, so I'll give him a 5. I
would say like there's basically 0 cagey moments in this whole thing. Yeah. The only cagey moments I count are the ones where he's like basically on the verge of death. He's like talking weird, but it's like that's not really a cagey moment. But at the same time, we got to have some.
Yeah, the cagiest moment to me was when they brought the pie in and he was like asking about how do you make this pie. That was cagey to me. But that was it.
In this pie, yeah.
Everything else, I felt like he did a really good job at just being very flat. And normally you critique somebody for that. But out of respect to an actual person, I'm glad he didn't go over the top and make this into a super cagey performance. So I'll give him a 5. 2 for the movie. Disrespectful. Very disrespectful, in my opinion, to the real event and the people that went through it. And then a 5 for Cage. It's okay. He was okay in this film.
Yeah. All right, Nigel, where do you rate USS Indianapolis on your Cageometer?
Yeah, this one... This movie makes me really mad for all the reasons we've talked about. It's like, I feel like the intent was there to make a good movie. We see this a lot. I don't think a lot of times people intend to make a bad movie, but it just sort of shakes out that way. But like we've said it. Why would you write this as the story for this actual tragedy? Like this story that has enough human drama and loss and courage and all the stuff that's there to make a good story that already exists because it happened in real life and I'm sure it's been written about in tons of books. Why would you dramatize it this way? And setting aside the story, the production of the film is the CG's terrible. The editing is awful. The music is not that is overbearing and shitty and melodramatic. And a lot of the shots just look, we said, they look fake. It's like this movie, the story deserves a much better film than what we got. And again, all the historical inaccuracies, you couldn't just bother to try and make things accurate. It's not like that would detract from the story at all.
Yep.
I mean, they had to dramatize some of it because apparently officially there is no reason why those distress calls were ignored. They on the record, like they talk about it in the movie, it's because it was on a secret mission. We had to disavow knowledge of the ship. Nobody could. But in actuality, like the ship was not reported missing because they had this protocol of like the ship's so large that if it doesn't show up where it's supposed to be, it'll be noticed. And that was the protocol at the time. And that's why it took them they didn't report it because they're like, all's well that ends well. You know, nobody's reported the ship missing, so it can't be missing. Is basically the rules, which changed after this accident happened, or not accident, whatever. Changed after this incident, and they didn't mention that at all. That was something I learned just watching elsewhere. It was like, it's just a massive fuck up from the government perspective. And I think they were trying to spin it with the atomic bomb angle, and I have no idea if that's true or not. It feels like they could have been more critical, if that's possible, of this actual story and what actually happened and why this many people died from this people dropping and then railroading McVeigh out of it. But anyway, That's just me being so pissed off that this story deserves a better telling than what we got, and I give it a 3.
Yeah.
Because there are certain aspects of it. I feel like it's trying to be respectful, but it just doesn't end up that way in it. And I don't want to harp too much on the story because it's based on the real story. Just the execution of it is really poor. And so, it's one of the worst movies to watch. But I feel like a 3 is my solid thing because there were good scenes in it. I feel like there was legitimately good moments, and there were aspects of a good film that came like his McVeigh's conversation with the Japanese commander at the end. I thought was very well acted and kind of got across the thesis of what the movie was going for, which is like they were both just men trying to do their duty. They were good men in the most horrible situations you can imagine, and one of them got dealt a really shitty hand by his own government and stuff. And they just. Yeah. Anyway, I don't want to talk about the movie anymore. It's not good. Cage performance.
I feel the best review of this. I don't want to talk about this movie anymore.
I don't. I can just talk about it all day about how it's disrespectful and shitty. But whatever. Move on. Feel the same with Vince on Cage's performance. I give him a 5 because it's the same. It's a middle of the road, and I think that was due in part to him just trying to respect the actual character. I don't know if McVeigh was like that in real life, if his performance is anything true to life, or if anybody even knew that. So maybe that's why they just sort of played it safe down the road, just trying to not be over the top or underperforming or whatever. But I think he did that just fine. But like you said, anybody could have played the character and it would have been the same. They got Cage for star power, but I don't think it was like Cage needed to be this guy and needed to play this character in a way that could give him Oscars or whatever. I think it was just he took a job, did what he could to portray the guy in a respectful manner, and that was it. So, 5 for me.
He actually said that he's been wanting to do a movie in the ocean for a long time because of Captain Nemo. And he was like looking for something specific because he was supposed to do something with Ron Howard. There was a movie that he was supposed to do with Ron Howard, and then that fell through. And then there was another movie that was supposed to be set on the ocean that fell through. And then he was like, I really want to do something on the ocean. And somebody handed him this script. And he's like, oh, that's perfect.
Yeah.
On my Cageometer, I'm not going to harp on this very much. I gave it a 3 out of 10 as well because in a world where Arsenal gets a 2, I don't know. You can't give this movie a worse number than that. Some of it was executed well. I feel like I see what they were trying to go for, but it just fell so flat. And like Nigel said, I'm just more angry that we got this instead of the real story. Like, you spent $40 million telling a fake version of one of the most interesting stories that you could have adapted to film. This is a horrifying, terrible experience that these men went through, and this is what you came up with is a faux story about an admiral's kid who stole all the rations and this weird racial parable that I get racism was a thing, obviously, yes, but do we need to focus on it in the limited screen time that we have to tell the story of these men who died horribly? I don't know. And then the love triangle with the baby and all that stuff. It was just weird, choices, and the author kid, and barely spent any time with McVeigh.
Yeah.
A lot of this stuff, it's just so many things that are just kind of clunky and not unnecessary and strange choices. Like you said, I guess maybe they were going for a Titanic or a Pearl Harbor type story where we kind of add a fake drama to the story that is real, therefore telling the story through our made up story.
Yeah.
But it just feels so disrespectful to do that to this story in particular. And Well, the stuff that Nigel has said about like what he researched and saw behind the scenes of like what actually really happened is so much more interesting than what they came up with for this movie. It just makes me unnecessarily mad. Like I just feel angry that this is what we got. So hopefully at some point they actually tell the real story and somebody who is an actual filmmaker or an actual writer puts something together that's better and more respectful to the honor of, you know, these men who went through about the most horrifying ordeal you could possibly ever go through. As far as Cage, same thing. I just middle of the road 5. Didn't really need to be Cage. Could have been anybody. I felt like he did it because he wanted to do Finding Nemo and the
Finding Nemo.
whatever, Captain Nemo, whatever, 10,000 Leagues Under the Sea, whatever. I don't really. This movie's bad. It's just so bad. I feel like our rating is higher than it deserves, but at the same time, it's like we've seen some other movies that are really fucking bad.
Yeah,
this movie has elements that are good, but for the most part, they kind of fail in the execution of almost everything. So yeah. Anyways, yeah, it's not a good movie. I don't recommend it. And even if you want to know the story of the USS Indianapolis, like just go read the Wikipedia page.
Or go watch a video. There's tons of YouTube videos.
Yeah,
that cover it.
yeah.
Watch a
10,
documentary.
15 minutes long, and you can get a much better scope of the human cost of what happened out of that than this movie.
This movie sucks so bad. I hate this movie so much. I hate it.
Yeah, it's not good. It's not good.